All right, so we're here today. We're here today to talk. I'm going to do a live stream, have some fun with my people, with you. But I'm also going to leave this stream up as a video, and the amount of valuable content in here isn't going to be amazing. What I was going to show was kind of why I'm trying out this JK BMS. They're kind of slick in the fact that they actually have a full case around them, as opposed to some of the ones that I've used in the past, like this Ant BMS. You can see it's just like 2 or 3 plates of aluminum, and this Ant BMS has worked well with this battery. These are 130 amp hour EVE cells. I never balanced this battery before I put it in service. I just built it all out, put the BMS on there, and just put it in service, and the BMS has got it balanced. All these cells can be at 3.5, 3.55 volts at the same time. So the Ant BMS is pretty good at balancing, even though it has a passive balancer in it. But with larger batteries going up to 230, 280, 320 amp hours, it gets harder and harder for these 100, 200 milliamp passive balancers in these BMSs to be able to keep all of these cells in line. So that's where the JK BMS comes in, because the option there is to be like, I'm going to install a BMS and an active balancer at the same time. It's like, it's just more work, more wires, more mess, more management. If you can have it built in, that's better. If you can add it after the fact, and that's fine. It still works, in my opinion. But the JK BMS, this one specifically, has a 600 milliamp active balancer, which is like 6 to 10 times higher than something like a JBD BMS. So it should be able to balance things better. And I have had some issues with larger capacity battery banks not being able to stay balanced, because every cell's going to have some level of internal resistance, and of course it's going to be different from cell to cell. Even if you try and match them as close as possible, there's going to be some difference. So having an active balancer could help. Edible Acres, thanks for jumping on. I appreciate that the videos have been helpful. I know that I can be very scatterbrained, but appreciate the kind words. So I'm going to try and put this in here. Now, one thing I would appreciate, and I don't see that they did that, on the Ant BMS here, or on the JBDs, I kind of go hokey, and I've got these wood cases. This is my lab case here for my battery, and I just kind of run these screws into the side to hold the BMS on. But this guy, with its beautiful case all the way around, doesn't have a lip to do that on, doesn't have little tabs that you would screw through. The only thing it's got is right here on the back, and I don't know if you'll be able to see that or not, it's like black on black. You can see these little machined threaded holes. So I can only assume that's how I'm expected to mount it. I might just mount it external to the battery. I've got this one mounted where it was like on the underside, on the underside of the board here on the lid, the underside of the lid. That's what I was trying to say. So I might just mount this one on top of the lid. So with this one, the lid would sit up top like this, and the only things exposed would be the positive and negative terminals. It's not the best design, but it worked for my little lab case here. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this guy off of my lid. I'm also really hoping that I can actually get this done with what I've got here at the house, because I'm not at the warehouse right now. And I've ended up with a lot of tools and supplies and stuff only existing at the warehouse, but not being here. So I'm hoping that the wires I have, for example, are long enough to reach my negative cables, if that makes any sense at all. Anyways, I realize that I'm not going to be providing a lot of valuable information here, because I'm replacing the BMS, and I'm not really doing anything beyond that. It's not like I'm going to go plug this in on screen and we're actually going to test something. These cells are actually already balanced, which kind of defeats the purpose of this whole thing. So I'll probably end up going and discharging one of the cells, just the single cell, just to see how long it takes for it to bring it back into order. it would be better to do this on like a 300 amp hour bank that's never been used before and see how long it takes to get it in line. When I build one of these with, when I say build a 230 amp hour battery bank, what I'll do up to this point is install a standard JBD BMS with passive balancing. And then when I'm building it, when I'm done building it, I'll take this active balancer, this Heltec 5 amp active balancer, and I've got these little alligator clip leads for it. So I'll just temporarily install the active balancer, charge the battery to full, and within like maybe 3 hours of being full, it's perfectly balanced and everything's fine. And then I just pull the active balancer off, battery's ready to go. The problem I found is that when I do that on like 300 amp hour, 320 amp hour cells, it'll then drift back out of balance. The JBD BMS just can't keep it in check, even though it was perfectly balanced to begin with. I probably already said this like 3 times, but the Ant BMS was actually really good at that. This one actually pulled this pack into balance all on its own. I built this pack, I installed the BMS, and I ran it. I didn't pre-balance the cells. I didn't top balance them from the get-go. But the JBD seems to have a little harder time doing that. Is it actually? I was just looking. I need, I'm like a newbie over here. I'm looking for, if I can see like analytics for this stream. Looks like I do actually have 5 people viewing, which is kind of cool. I was just looking to see. I don't think everyone actually shows up in the chat unless you actually say something in the chat, which is reasonable. Cool, I've got 5 people. 5 people is a crowd for me. All right, I'm gonna pull out, I guess I'm gonna pull out all these sense leads, right? Because these are the sense leads for the Ant BMS. So I'm gonna pull these out. Also, if you guys had questions, even if they're not necessarily regarding BMSs, feel free to take the opportunity to find out my opinion on something. It's, you know, I'll try and put fact in there, but in the end, it's, you know, my opinion, so. My opinion of fact. Let me know if my quality or voice or anything goes off the rails. So, I do have my phone charging. It's probably, I'm gonna touch it and hopefully I don't mess something up here. Ooh, it's getting toasty. I do have my phone charging and I'm using my phone's internal mic. And it's just using Wi-Fi to do this. So I skipped the whole OBS thing, running it to my computer and whatnot. So I'm just doing it straight from my phone instead. Where is my? This is my 10mm. I need to go around here and loosen every single sense lead. But yeah, if you have questions about something, let me know. Steven is asking, what's your favorite BMS? And he says everything's great on his end. I appreciate that everything's great on your end. I hope that you're referring to your viewing of me is great on your end. I have a bunch of breakers stacked here that you probably can't see. Anyway. Hey, by the way, if the stream goes offline, such as my old iPhone overheats and just shuts off, I do have another one here that I should be able to fire it back up on, so you can try and see if you can rejoin. Just knocking over breakers. We have them here because we're listing a bunch of stuff on eBay, and so I made myself a little spot at the desk here. Workbench, desk, same difference. Oh, I was answering Steven's question about favorite BMS. That's a really good question. I'm hoping that the JK can be a favorite BMS. To this point, I've installed and sold probably 100 of the JBDs. They're solid BMSs. I think the only thing, maybe 2 things. One thing would be the active balancing. It would be nice if they just added active balancing. Like, I don't feel like it would be that hard. I don't think that the price is that big of an issue. I think it's just, they'd have to implement it. Maybe they don't want to change. I don't know. But that, and then like communication to an inverter, which there are JBD BMSs with like RS485, and you can probably convert that to CAN bus with something. But it would be cool if JVD, JK BMS, Dali even. I don't like Dali. I don't like Dali BMS. It would be cool if they all started doing the communications protocols. Like, I mean, China's already copied them off of everybody, right? Everyone's got the Pylon Tech, CAN bus, and or RS-485 protocols in one BMS or another. So it's like, it doesn't feel like it would be that hard to just go ahead and implement that in these little standalone BMSs, as opposed to having to use, like, I've got one here, right? This one, like, this is like a BMS with a screen, right? That has something like you would see in a rack mount battery. So right now, you basically have to do one of these in order to get CAN bus and RS-485 that'll talk up to your inverter. And I feel like that's silly. Why do we have to make a rack mount battery or install this some way in our DIY batteries in order to have that communication? So I'm hopeful that the JK BMS actually has RS-485 that will communicate to inverters. I was told initially when I was buying these, because she was pushing them from Alibaba, my contact, she was pushing, was like, yo, you should go get JK, you should get JK, you should get JK. And I'm like, well, I want something that's gonna talk to my inverter. She's like, it'll talk. And I was doubtful. This was like months and months ago. I was doubtful. I was like, is it? I don't know that it will. Like, will you promise me that? And I don't think she ever really promised me, or she did. And I always take it with a grain of salt when someone over there is over there, in China, because all they want to do is sell their thing. And there are exceptions, but a lot of them will just say whatever they have to say in order to get you to buy something, even if it's just $100 or $200. So I had a lot of doubts. And then this time around, I really pushed her, and she said she went back to the engineers. The engineers were like, well, in order to talk to your Mega Revo inverter, you'd have to do a custom build or something with the BMSs, and you'd have to order 100 of them or 1,000 of them or something in order for it to work. So that's for Mega Revo specifically. I sent them something that someone had that was a breakout of how the Mega Revo communicates. But the thing is, the Mega Revo can communicate on, it can be, like, I'm pretty sure you can set your battery to like Pylon Tech, and Mega Revo will talk to it, right? So if the JK BMS can speak Pylon Tech, then I think it would work with an inverter. That's what I'm hoping, because I think it would be really cool to have something for a DIY battery that would also work with inverters. That was a really long explanation. Here's my spaghetti mess. This always looks so pretty on the battery, and then you take it off and you're like, well, I didn't even bother trimming the zip ties on this thing. Alright, here you go, BMS. Maybe I should plug you in. I don't need you. So there you go. It's kind of a non-answer. JBD, I guess you could consider as my favorite right now. Until I test out the JK, if someone's building a large battery, like a 230 amp hour plus, what I'm recommending is that they do a Heltec balancer in addition to the BMS. It's like $60. And yeah, it takes a little bit extra to wire it in, but it's good insurance that you're going to stay balanced. It's pretty heavy wire, Christopher. You get 2 gauge. I guess that'll be good for my 150 amp BMS. Usually I would do like 4 gauge for something that's going to do 100 amps. Oh, I guess my amp BMS, the amp BMS is like 150 amps, so that would make sense that I did 2 gauge on this. Okay, got all of that off. I actually pre-crimped my leads here, and then my daughter brought in another set of leads, so now I'm searching for the ones, nope, not that one, and not that one, because those are both uncrimped. She got into one of my BMSs and got it all unpacked for me. Here's one, oh, here they are. So, I had to go look online. It's so funny. When you search for like, oh, I've got the part number for this BMS. I'll search the part number and user manual, because I was never given a user's manual, which is fine. I also never asked for it. I'm sure they would give it to me. You can search for user's manual. You can't find a user's manual. It's like, this is so weird. It's so funny because with these BMSs, like, usually the best way to find the wiring diagram is to actually find it on AliExpress, And then they'll list out all these images in the description. It's like, if you're connecting a 16S battery, then you can use, you know, this wiring. So I used AliExpress. Yes, I do have a daughter. I try to keep them off camera. Inevitably, you'll see one here and there. But I feel like they deserve to not be on camera when they're 2 years old and then find out at 16. And they've got this whole history of them online that they didn't even know about. Anyway, so I was looking up how this worked, and basically you've got your B minus. You've got, sorry, I was just directing my children. They should have been in bed like, 45 minutes ago. Anyway, so for a 16S battery, this is a 24S BMS. There's one thing I like about the JBD. I'm able to order them as a 16S BMS. So you end up with, 17 wires, right? Your B minus and then your 16 positives. So you don't end up with something like this where you've got all these wires that you don't need. At least for a 48 volt battery. I do have BMSs where they work for 24 or 48, and so then you have to end up doing something like this. But for the JK, when I was looking it up, you use every single one of these wires. So you start with B minus, and you get all the way to, what is this? I think this is 14, B14, B15, B16, and then you skip all these here, and then this is the main positive. So that's the way it showed to wire it, and if this AliExpress image is wrong, then maybe I'll blow it up on camera. Who knows? So that's the way I did it, and I already put my little ring terminals on here. By the way, if you need these ring terminals, I probably got them linked different places, but I really like these for BMSs. So, because it's hard to find something for sense leads that is a 1/4 inch hole or an M6, because you're putting such a small little tiny wire in there, but it's kind of a large terminal, right? So something that's like what is this, like a 16 gauge or an 18 gauge wire, typically this would be a much smaller hole. Like, why would you run a super small wire to this large of a hole? All right, I'll blow it up on camera. I won't do it on purpose, but inevitably, right? Inevitably I will. Anyway, I get these from DigiKey, and they're super soft. I don't know if they're aluminum. They're probably aluminum or like lead or something, but you're able to crimp them super easy. Granted, I did actually, spring for real crimpers, which makes it easier on my hands. So, if I'm gonna go for, I was talking earlier that I was gonna install this BMS up on top. If I do that, then my B minus wires have to reach all the way to my negative terminal, and that will require a new hole, which I'm not opposed to. So I guess I would do something like, and the only reason I'm doing this is I don't really have a way to mount this to the underside. I don't think so. I mean, I could do something like just put screws there, but then it would be basically friction mounted. And this is metal, so I definitely don't want that falling on top of the terminals inside. I guess it's possible I could use like screws that are longer like this and just hold them against. I wonder if I did that, if I did mount it from the underside, could, my temperature leads. Oh, that's kind of nice. That is something some of the BMS, some of the JBD BMSs don't have very long leads on their temperature sensors. Like, they'll be like this long. You're just like, why is it so short? Like, this is a 16S battery. You expect it to be within 4 inches of BMS? Anyway. If I mounted it like this, like, would that be long enough to reach the terminal? These wires are kind of short. It would be close, but I could do that. Oh, the thing is, I already messed this up. I didn't mess it up on camera though. I put So this is P minus, which goes to the top of the case, the battery, the terminal at the top. But I put a 5/16 on it instead of a 3/8. So now I have to decide, am I going to drill that out to 3/8 or cut it off and put a 3/8 on there, a 3/8 hole. But I don't know if I've got enough length to do a 3/8 hole and still put the BMS in. So if I stick it through, I'm already really tight. I think, well, I could probably make that work, even if I cut it off. Because honestly, that's the easiest thing to do, is just cut it off and put the right one on there. Okay, so then the next question is, where does my, see if this goes like this. Steven's asking, could you use extra wire for the temp sensor? I'm sure you could extend it. I guess it'd be easier if they just had a little like connector, a little extension connector, instead of having to like solder the wires on. But I mean, this is just an NTC sensor. I'm sure you could just, speaking of wires, it's like I could just disconnect these for now and not have them flailing all over the place. I bought like every accessory they had because I wanted to see if I could make any of them work. So this one is an RS485 dongle. So this should give me RS485 out, which I might be able to connect up to my inverter. And then I also got like their, where'd it go? Where'd it go? I lost it. Well, I bought their little USB dongles, which are probably just like super generic. Like this is a CAN bus USB. So I should be able to connect CAN bus to this. I don't know if it'll do CAN bus from this straight to an inverter or not. It seems like it could. Where did I leave? I had my little, oh, there it is. Let's see it. I haven't actually unwrapped this one. This one's a little screen. Curious what this looks like. You guys are like, I thought you were building a battery. No, apparently I'm just looking at all the accessories that I bought for the battery. Didn't buy all the accessories, but I bought all the ones that seemed like they would matter. Like they have a screen that's made for mounting on like a handlebar. If you had an e-bike or something, I guess, which I suppose that's why a lot of these things don't have like CAN bus to an inverter, is because they're built for e-bikes. But surely by now they know that so many people are using them for solar storage, right? Like, so many people. So that's kind of cool. It looks like it's got little holes on the bottom, so you could totally like mount it on something. You could probably just mount this here. It's got a single button on the right side. I think that's the power switch, because I think that the connector that this goes into in the back of the BMS is the same connector as, oh gosh, where did I leave it? If I cleaned my desk before I did this, it would work out better. The same connector that these little switches go in. So you can totally just put a cute little switch to turn your BMS on and off. Apparently these don't turn on automatically when you wire up the sense leads. You actually have to activate them, which I guess is similar to the Ant BMS that I had on here previously. You actually had to like use a 1.5 volt battery or 3 volt battery or something to power it on. So you couldn't even just like use an on-off switch. You actually had to use a battery. Apparently the older JK BMSs were like that. I'm told these are just short out the wires and it turns on, which is much nicer. Much nicer. Thank you, all 9 of you that are here, enjoying me ramble on. I shouldn't assume that you're enjoying me ramble on. Putting up with me, at the very least. Putting up with me. Wait, did I was sitting there looking for a switch and I had one plugged into the back of the unit. Okay, that makes sense. That checks out. If I install this on the bottom, I've got to have a way to hold it to the bottom of the board, which means having a few screws, and I also need to make sure that my B- wires will reach the negative of the battery. So if underneath I'm needing to mount it something like that in order for it to work. Hey Dan, how are you doing? By the way, if anybody's looking for like Dan, you can say exactly what it is, but he's got a 24 volt like complete setup for um, Steven, thank you. He's got a 24 volt complete setup using Outback, charge controller, inverter, whatever. He's switching out. I don't think he knows exactly what he's going to switch it out for, but probably a 48 volt setup. So he's looking to sell everything as a package, a 24 volt solar package. So if anybody's looking for something, I don't know. He's you're like North Texas, Oklahoma area, right? I don't know exactly where you live versus if you got it at a cabin or something, but what am I doing? I am looking for, I need some screws. I should probably just go find some sheetrock screws or something, because those are just universal for everything, right? I wonder if I've got some just laying around. Well, there's some deck screws that will probably. Oh gosh, sorry. I had to look at my rear end there. These are some deck screws that were holding my floor down. That's the project I should actually be working on, is like putting my house back together, not building a battery by this. Okay, the problem is I'm going to mount this upside down, aren't I? Because this is my P minus. It goes, oh no, it's on the other side. Let's see. So P minus right there. Okay, so this is where I need it, right? Is that going to reach? That's going to be so tight. So if I have that, I'm about to drop this on the battery. Oh wait, y'all are just waiting for the sparks, aren't you? See, I think you're here for more than me. You're actually here for the sparks. Oh, this is getting tight. I should probably put it at an angle as much as possible. Also, it would probably be helpful. Helpful if I had a drill bit that was 3/8 and I could go ahead and drill this out. I am going to. Ooh, do I want to take the risk? I think I might just deal with that later. I'm going to drill this out. So for now, I'll stick it through so that I can get as much length in this as possible. These are going to be way too long, aren't they? Way too long. I really need a shorter shirt. We're waiting for smoke. Yes, this is. Should be a. It's a great idea for a YouTube channel, like the magic smoke channel. Letting the magic smoke out. Y'all seen that one? I don't know what his name is. If he's YouTube or if he's on Facebook or something, but he's always like he's always shorting something out on purpose. It's like under the guise of, let me show you how this works. Alright, excuse me for a second. I know where some screws are. I'll be right back. I brought a few extras, that way they can sit on my table for the next 6 months and I can move them from one spot to the next as I need a little bit of an extra space. Okay. So this guy needs to be pretty close. Is that going to be close enough to get, if I do it upside down? And honestly, if I drill him out, that will be plenty close right there. Here we go. The jank begins. This is me telling all the BMS manufacturers, would you please put little mounting holes that we can drill through? I promise we won't always be building them on wood, but even on metal, it would be nice to have a mounting hole. No smoke yet. I hit a knot in my plywood or something. Okay. Oops. Ooh, I want to share something. Oh. F is for fabricate. You're asking if I have any. Do I have any cells for sale? You asked for seals. I'm assuming you meant cells. Drill pilot holes. I mean, yeah, pilot holes would work. That would make things less interesting. It's on there now, so I think we're good. Now the question is, it's not as tight as I was thinking. But the question is, oh yeah, there's plenty of space. It's not gonna drop so low as to hit the bus bars. Do I have any cells for sale? I don't have any at the warehouse. I can always check to see what's available here in the US. If you want to buy through me, I realize there's probably cheaper ways to buy. But yeah, if you want, I can check. I've got, I don't have any large cells coming in. The only cells that I've got coming in right now are these 130 amp hour ones. And the reason for that is I had to choose what to concentrate on. Because, I only have so many hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting around. And I decided to concentrate on building rack mount 130 amp hour 48 volt batteries. It's very specific, but they've got CAN bus RS485 communications up to the inverters. They're in a metal case. They're all real nice, and it's something that I can have at the warehouse and be like, I need a battery for my system, and I'm really trying to push towards 48 volt stuff, and I'm like, I can just have a stock of those and have hopefully 8, 10, 20, 30 of them sitting there and go for it. Yeah, it's really hard to move big batteries. Honestly, after putting the 130 amp hour ones together, I'm like, I can see why they did 100 amp hours as kind of like the max. It's not the max. You can. There's plenty of companies out there that are still doing the 2, 3, 100 amp hour 48 volt batteries, and they're massive. Like this one's okay mounted in wood. Like I can grab it and I can kind of move it around. When I build one out of metal, like it's about all I can do to move that around by myself. It's big. Thanks, Dan. Yeah, I guess it does have the holes on the back. So I guess if I got the right machine screws, then I could just have a plate with holes on the side and mount it that way. I guess if I was installing it on metal, like this is like the slowest battery BMS replacement ever. This is a metal plate where all the cells are stacked on one side, and then the BMS mounts on these thingamabobs. I've envisioned, and I don't know, if I could get to the point where like the JK does have communications to inverters, it would be kind of cool to have a more simple battery that doesn't have the screen and all the extra ports and stuff, that it just had something like a JK mounted inside, and I guess I could run something like this and have the holes drilled out in the proper places and the proper machine screws for the BMS, so I could just slap it on here, screw it in from the backside, and I'm done. Which, to be fair, in that sense, they did give me holes to mount the BMS. I just didn't use them because It's my fault. Yeah. Sorry, just reading all the comments. Bob, you're asking if I still like the Mega Revo. I still have a pair of them at my house. So, and they've been working well. I've got about 12,000 watts between the two. I've got like 2,000 watts on one of them and then like 10 kilowatt of panels on the other one. And even with them, because I had to work out a little bit with them being imbalanced like that. But I mean, with the current firmware, I've been running for probably a month now. And I had to beg them for the new firmware. I don't know why. They should have just been like, new firmware. Yeah, with this firmware, it's running really good, you know. And I've got the firmware, so I can give it to somebody now. Of course, the way I'm running it is, of course, is like a peak shift. Now I do have it set up where it's like meter to a sub panel to the inverters, and then the inverters feed the whole house. So I've got 2 electric hot water heaters, I've got 2 3-ton air conditioners, I've got the oven, the stove top, it's all electric. We, after putting the right size breakers in, I was running it at the whole house through a 40 amp breaker, which was a little hilarious when I found that out. We tripped it once. I was like, why did it trip? And I looked at it, I was like, oh, it's a 40 amp breaker that tripped? Like, what the heck? Why do I have a 40 amp breaker there? Anyway, was running the whole house on a 40 amp breaker. And this is a house with 320 amp service. They had a 125 amp panel and a 200 amp panel to run this house. Of course, that was in 1976 when everything was like resistive electric, mainly the heaters. Those things I'm sure pulled a lot when they had to run. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, I've been running them both. I think the only thing is I've only got 16 kilowatts of power. So in the winter, when my upstairs heat pump, and it's an older heat pump, so like when it hits 32, 34 degrees Fahrenheit, it's done. It's not making any heat. So the heat strips do come on, and that pulls like 6 kilowatts. So if I'm doing that and I'm running the downstairs heat pump and the oven and the water heaters, like it's gonna be too much at some point. So I'll probably have to flip back over to grid at some point in the winter when we try to supplement with our wood fireplace insert, but there's only so much you can do. Trying to heat a large house with just a single fireplace insert, and it is not open concept. So, you know, it's sticking box fans and doorways and stuff. But I do like the inverters. I know they get a bad rap, and I've had some people be like, I think I'm gonna go with what Will says and get something else. And I don't have a problem with that. That's perfectly okay. If someone buys an inverter from me and we can't get it working right, I'm gonna pay for shipping back, and we'll find something else that works for you. But because I do have 3 of them sitting at my warehouse, that 2 of them are probably going down to a guy in Houston. But I think they are good hardware, and they probably shot themselves in the foot, because I think they finally got the software where it's actually working now. But the last I heard, this is kind of weird because they messaged me in the middle of the day, which is, you know, middle of the night for them, right? The Mega Revo folk messaged me and they're like, so EG4 is not going to buy the Mega Revo anymore. I think they still have it on their website last I checked, but it could be that they've decided they're not going to do it anymore. And I think it's just because there's been so many issues and tech support issues, and I think once the firmware's upgraded and you get through the nuances of how the software's programmed, because there's some weird stuff in there, like it doesn't act the way that I expect it to act, and then I have them program it for me, and it's like, well, it's working now, but like, I mean, I set it up the way it seemed logically to be set up, so why didn't it work for me? And I go look at their settings, and I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Why would it be that way? So I think that's just that the engineers, maybe it's a translation thing. I don't know. Maybe the UI guys and the engineers just aren't really talking. Anyway, it was a long time to talk about my Mega Revo when I'm supposed to be talking about batteries. Doesn't really matter. We're here to talk. That's what I'm here for. You even said it was off topic. Okay, so now I get to use my fancy new crimper. Might have to go grab. No, I think I've got it here. this is. I don't have a 1/4 inch. I was talking about whether I actually had all the tools to do this and supplies to do it. I think I'm gonna make it out. But I didn't have a 1/4 inch hole for my 2-gauge lug. But 5/16 should be fine. It'll be fine. These are 7-gauge, which probably really just means that they're a millimeter squared and it translates to 7-gauge, so it's okay, Bob. I'm okay with being distracted. There's only so much I can talk about regarding a BMS. If I was a little more talented, I would be building while talking about something else, but here we are. This is really cool. I don't know if you guys have seen the other one that I've got, but goes back to, I've got battery building stuff here, then I've got all the stuff at the warehouse. It's a lot cooler here. It was 109 today. Oh my gosh. But I went ahead and bought a second one, and this is their newer version, I guess, and it can be operated one-handed, which is really cool. It was really annoying trying to get the other one to work, because now it's like, how cool is that? He's so cute. Alright, so this guy is gonna be, he needs to be upside down, right? Like this? Yeah, like this. It does seem to take more pumps to get it crimped, which makes sense because it's a smaller handle. So there's definitely like a use case for the other one that takes like 2 or 3 pumps before it's done. But I might be fine with it. Honestly, the only thing better, and I might at some point look at getting something that's like bench top mount kind of thing, maybe even like electric, who knows? I guess that depends on whether I actually build batteries in the future, or if it becomes something that I go ahead and outsource to China. Bean loves his BMSs. It's true. They're a pretty core part, you know. Okay, so this guy will go. Can you even see what I'm doing? He's sort of, kind of, not really. Woof. Really tight. Oh yeah, that'll be fine. I mean, you know, silicone wire is made to bend, right? Like, that's the whole point. That's the whole point. Okay, so now I know where that's gonna be. I think the reason I started working on that is because I had all my sense leads out, and I was like, wait, do I need to send these sense leads through a hole before I start connecting them? And then I decided I'm putting the BMS on the inside of the battery here, so everything's fine. All right, this is my B minus, which means I'm going to start with, excuse me, first, I'm going to put all these nuts on this side. So I can grab them. So I'll probably run, let's see, how should I do it? The way I had it before, I had all the wires running straight down the middle. And I think part of the reason for that was the wires were only so long. Actually, no, I trimmed those wires. I don't know. I was debating whether I should run them. I should probably run them down the middle of each row, and then I can bring them together. I'm just debating which way the room terminal should face. Yeah, we need panels that can run off heat, like Peltiers or something that apply heat to one side and it creates electricity. Anyway, that would be cool. Yeah, I was was looking at my stats earlier on my system. I was saying that I have 12 kilowatts, which when it's like 100 degrees out, I can make it through the day. Now, me making it through the day means that I charge my battery overnight, and then between 5 a.m. and 8 p.m., I don't use any electricity from the grid. That's me making it through the day. So with 12 kilowatts of solar, and it's 100 degrees out, I can just get there. Maybe 100, 102. Anything higher than that, like today, we ran out of power at about, I was watching it today, it was about 7:05, 7:10, and we were done. We had no more battery left. There was about 800 watts of solar coming in, and it was done. So we probably pulled 8 kilowatt hours or so from the grid, but you know, it's not 109 every day, so it's fine. And then I got told by a bunch of people on Facebook that they knew a guy with solar panels if I needed to hook up. So let's be real. I was really just posting it there in case anybody was like, "Oh, you do?" And then I can be like, "Sure, I can get you solar panels." I probably didn't play it off quite right, but it's fine. Oh, you can actually see. Oh, that's funny. So I've got my phone pointed at me so that I can actually see what it looks like, but when I actually look at the live stream, you can see more of the battery. Or maybe the screen's just brighter, I don't know. It's actually a fairly good setup there, as long as you ignore the ugly makeshift curtains in the background that are there just to prevent so much heat coming in the house. And I am honestly okay with questions that would distract me. Certainly at this point, I think I can do this almost blindfolded. Almost. That would be a fun challenge, except for the fact that you're messing with electricity. Build the battery blindfold. It's like uh-oh, should I mention pew pew? It's like pew pews, right? Yeah, I can aim it down. Get a little better view. Hold on, I'm gonna try and do it without knocking things over. We'll see how that goes. You can probably get some of that shadow off there too, because I don't need this here. There. Hello. Done being a dork for the moment. Don't worry, there's another moment coming right up. Notice that I don't have this plugged into the BMS for all one person that cares. And that's so if I accidentally like short this out to somewhere, there's nothing connected on this end, so no harm to foul. Whereas if I had it connected to the BMS, it could actually damage something. I think I've only smoked one BMS, I think, and I don't actually know why. It was a JVD 16S BMS, and for some reason I got the whole thing built, and then went to turn it on, and it was like, no. And I had another one there, and I plugged it in, and it worked. I suppose it could be that it was dead in arrival, but who knows. Let's see. Oh, I already plugged that one in. So now this one right here. My strategy, you guys already know my strategy probably. My strategy when connecting BMS sense leads is, first of all, of course, go to AliExpress, because apparently that's the place to find how these things connect, and look at where is B minus compared to B1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? Because typically what you've got is, for a 16S battery, you've got 17 connections. Your B minus, and then all of your positives. And so the way I think about it is, obviously your B minus, your main negative terminal, right? and then the next bus bar. And then you just follow the bus bars the way the electrons would follow the battery. Obviously the last one's not going to have a bus bar unless it was a multiple cells per group, but yeah, your last positive would go there. Now, there is a caveat there because some BMSs will have a separate positive like power wire versus the main positive sense lead. So on this one, there is this wire here is the last sense lead. This is sense lead 16, V16 positive. This one here is main positive. So those two, look at that, going to the same place. And I think it's so that the BMS is powered from a separate wire, probably for resistance issues, not that it takes that much power. Could also be for auto detection. I don't know if that would really be for auto detection or not, if that would be enough, just knowing that the other wires just aren't plugged in. Because I could try disconnecting B16 and then see if it works as a 15S battery then. Failure scenarios of BMSs, that would be interesting to check. If you dropped a sense lead. Because that would be a way to kill a battery, right? For some reason you dropped a sense lead and then the BMS was like, oh look, it's a 15S battery instead of a 16S battery. Like, I guess you've got your overall voltages that are still set, so if it sees an overall voltage that drops below a certain threshold, it would still cut out, but you wouldn't have the individual cell protection of that one sense lead that went out. I don't know. I'm just pontificating here. Alright, so this is my second to last. Problem is I'm just not that detailed. Any of you watched Boo? Linus Tech Tips. And they're going through this whole thing where they've got this whole lab set up and they've spent, you know, $100,000 on this power testing or power supply testing rig to be able to send, you know, bad power to a power supply, to be able to pull too much current to, but it's just like so detailed. It's like computer program tests and changing frequency on stuff and like very, very detailed. And then they're creating these test scenarios. Like he literally has people working full time creating all this stuff, test scenarios, so that they can just like plug a power supply in, hit a button and walk away. And the power supply might blow up. I think they've got like a chamber for it to be in because it could catch on fire. They're literally throwing failure scenarios at it and seeing if it can handle it. And doing stuff like that manually is just hard. It's hard, which is, you know, why he's doing it that way. But he's spending who knows how many hundreds of thousands of dollars to create these test rigs. But he's doing the same thing for like benchmarking computers, right? Because in the past, I was watching him talk about this, in the past, benchmarking was like, oh, a new video card came out. So you get like 10 different reviews where they benchmark it and do this and that. But then if that video card stays around as a legit video card to use for like 2 years, then suddenly all the new drivers that came out, the new games, like you go back to that review and it's useless because it's not current anymore. And so he's talking about these automated tests where they can literally just plug a video card in and it'll go back and go through every driver revision there is, every game that they've got in the library, and record all these results and just throw it into a database. So then they could still do videos and stuff on this hardware. They'd just be able to pull from the database and create interesting content, but you can also just go pull queries from this database. I assume they would make it public. I don't actually know. It's a lot of data. And that data is useful, but it's most useful if you know how to actually pull it. So I'm sure if they made it public, other YouTubers and stuff would use it. But they would, I'm sure Linus and his group would know how to use it best, because you have to create an entertaining video at the same time. But anyway, I'm going to go through and torque these down to probably 45 inch-pounds. That's 35, 45. Probably wouldn't do it as tight as 45 if these batteries didn't have laser welded studs. When I first started doing iron phosphate cells, they would just drill and tap the aluminum plug in the top of the battery. Those were such a pain. They were such a pain because they just strip out, you know. And I was really careful with them, and I had pretty good luck. But like, I'd build a battery for somebody or sell it to somebody, and then they'd mess with it, and then it would just strip out, and it just becomes this thing. You got to try and helicoil it, and it's just a mess. So I really appreciate that we've come to a point where, you know, I realize these batteries weren't originally made for what we're using them for, probably. Or maybe this just that they make them raw and then all the manufacturers do what they want with them, and they'll laser weld them into a pack that they want, the size that they want, whereas Eve, the manufacturer, will just make a flat top on the cell. Anyway, so laser welded studs, it's really cool because you're able to torque them down much better without worrying about stripping something. Great part of the evolution of batteries. Okay, so everything is tightened except for my main negative and my main positive. My main positive I'm slightly scared of, but I probably need to go ahead and put that on. Some heat shrink over this that is not shrunk, just in case. I am actually trying not to smoke something, so I'm sorry for those that are waiting for me to, because I might not. My track record is actually fairly good. Okay, so now I need, just thinking through it, I should probably do some wire management, and I think, there they are. I have some zip ties. How am I gonna do this? I want this guy to be able to reach like right there. Oh, is it gonna be a mess? And of course this goes to both sides. Of course it does. So all of these go to one side. Oh, that helps a little bit. That's less of a mess. Bless my mess. Code hack. It is a Palmister all-in-one in the background. Good eyes. They've got a cool color scheme, don't they? I've had pretty good luck. I mean, Palmister inverters, most of their inverters are actually SRNE. So if you go look them up, they're an OEM that makes inverters for Renogy and Midnight Solar. Is it Midnight Solar? They've got the DIY versions of their stuff, which is really just SRNE inverters, which is kind of funny because they're touted as like an American-made company, and then they've got these Chinese inverters. It's the DIY brand, right? But I've had pretty good luck. This one here is a newer one that I still need to mess around with a little bit. I was having some trouble with it floating. It wouldn't float my lithium batteries, and I think it might just be a learning thing on my side about how these inverters really work, because in my mind, I want, when I charge a battery, for it to reach full, and I want it to stay at full. I want it to keep that battery at 56, 57 volts until it has to start using the battery. And with many devices I've been using, they'll get to full and then they'll just stop charging and they'll let it drop to resting voltage. And like, how do you balance your cells every day? Because you got to balance them every day, right? How do you balance your cells if you just reach full and then drop off? Because you're only going to be above 3.5 volts a cell for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, I don't know, before it's like, oh, you're full, now we're gonna drop off. And these SRE inverters, the Palmister inverters, they usually have like they have a voltage level where the voltage has to drop to that level before they start charging again. So with this guy, I think it's like 54 or 52 volts or something, right? So if it'll hit 50, say I've got it set to 57 as the charge voltage, as soon as it hits 57, it stops charging, it'll drop all the way down to like 52 volts, and then it'll start charging again. That seems silly to me, because 52 is like, you typically can't set it high enough to where it's above nominal voltage, nominal charged voltage, or at least nominal like 51.2, but it seemed to rest higher than that. So it could be something that I'm doing wrong or I'm thinking about wrong, but I was trying to contact them and trying to work through this, and they don't usually listen to me. So, you know, but more or less, I haven't had a problem with Palmister. I've seen somebody, because I've kept an eye on the group of people that use Palmister. There was one guy that had their 3,000 watt all-in-one that I've used a lot, and the solar was just acting really weird. Like, it just wouldn't charge. They ended up replacing it for him, and the new one worked. So there was something weird going on in there. But I mean, you're gonna have hardware failures with anything you choose, so I don't really count that against them. And I mean, it's a plus that they actually replaced it. So, and I've had people tell me about them blowing it up, and then Palmister honored the warranty and replaced it or whatever. So overall, I don't have a problem. And I mean, I buy and sell Palmister. I could probably go straight to SRE, but I might at some point. Who knows? Maybe I'll get my own little logo and stuff to put on there. But generally speaking, yes, they make good stuff because they're rebadging SRE, and no, it's not like super high quality stuff, but it's not junk. It's not like this. It's not like the PWM controllers being sold as MPPT and stuff like that. SRE is also catching up to the game with the higher voltage solar inputs. So I've been using their Palmister 5K that operates on a 48 volt battery that has the 120 volt output, and it was like, up until the EG4 3000 watt came out, it was the only 120 volt AC inverter that had high voltage input for solar. You could do 500 volt strings. When that one came out, it had some competition and had probably better backing with EG4. But yeah, it was really good. So this one here is the updated version of the 5K that does paralleling. So you can get 240 volts out of this one. So this is a 5,000 watt, 120 volt output. Can accept 500 volts input from solar. I think it's 500, 550, something like that. It's an 80 amp solar charger. It's got the automatic transfer switch, all that jazz. I kind of don't like this. It also has I think it's got the hybrid functionality where you could dump to the grid, which honestly I'd rather just not have for something like that, because it's never going to be UL listed, right? Like, I don't want something that's not UL listed that could dump to the grid. Kind of like some of the EG4, like 6500 or 6000, I've heard reports of people being told by their utility that they were leaking power to the grid. So I'd really rather not. Like, I don't want to leak power to the grid. Not with something like that. Like, I don't need to output to the grid with that. That was a really long version of saying, was that okay or not? Happy to dump knowledge. Like I said at the beginning of this is, if you ask me something, you're getting my opinion. So whether you like it or not. Okay. So then this guy needs to be managed. Management. Where's you? You can be right there. I'm hoping that this Palmister behind me is kind of my in-between, because I want to stock the Mega Revo. Honestly, I'd like to stock the Mega Revo and push that for people that want to do grid tie systems, because that leaves you the option of having a battery later. I don't know if y'all have watched the market, but just about all of the grid tie inverter manufacturers out there have hybrid inverters. Most of them are for high voltage batteries, which makes it harder for the DIY guy because you have to buy a certain battery typically in order for it to work. But like Sunny Boys, I was talking to a distributor just the other day. Sunny Boys have been notoriously hard to get a hold of. And he was telling me that they discontinued their line of grid tie inverters. I was like, that's kind of weird. Like, why would they discontinue it? And he's like, well, yeah, because they're releasing their hybrid version. And they're just going to have, like, that will be the grid tie inverter will be the hybrid version. And I was like, I mean, it makes sense because everything is going hybrid. All these, you can still find them, but generally speaking, net metering is going away. And so people will either need to peak shift, kind of like what I'm doing, or go off grid. And most people don't want to go off grid. It's too much trouble. And I think that's okay. Like, not everyone needs to be off grid. But they do need a way to be able to store their own power. And even if they don't buy a battery now, if all the grid tie inverters going in now have the capability of adding a battery, at least that makes it a lot easier to come back and be like, no, we don't have to replace your inverter, we just need to pull permits and put this battery in place and everything's good. And then the battery prices will all come down because everybody's needing batteries. Okay, so now I don't like this. I was saying this earlier. I really liked having a 16S BMS with 17 wires and you didn't have to worry about the mess of the extra wires. I'm debating just snipping them. I've done that before. I mean, I'm never going to use this as a 24S BMS, right? There's no reason to keep these extra wires unless I wired it wrong. And then I snip them and then I end up needing them. So maybe I should at least plug it in and see if it works. That would mean, first of all, kind of cover these leads up with something so that I don't short them out. Maybe I can use this. Come here, you. They're not even all the same length. Dang it. You would think a guy like me would have like some electrical tape or something laying around. You would think. But no, instead he's wrapping something in plastic and then zip tying it. It would be nice. As if I had something that kind of held this up. Why is it so far over? I just messed up by putting that BMS so much of an angle. Oh, that'll be fine. Is there something I can leave this on? Maybe I'll just bolt it in. And then it'll be better than it is now. Unless we have that to match. Can't get my nut to thread on there. There it goes. Where did my wrench go? So let's. Gosh, I don't like that. There we go. That's better. I didn't heat shrink my terminals. Why didn't I heat shrink my terminals? I got that. Okay, I'm done with my torque wrench, which means I need to release the tension on my torque wrench. As if it actually has an accurate readings at this point, because I definitely forgot to do that in the past. Okay, so this is kind of tight. So if I plug this in and there's smoke, I'm sure you'll still be able to see it from there. Ah, my wires are pointed the wrong direction. That's fine, they'll still fit. Okay, so this one goes here. No smoke yet. And then this one goes here. Okay, so my BMS is plugged in. Now with this BMS, it does not automatically fire up, which means I need either a switch or my fancy dancy LCD screen. And I think that this is the power button on the side. So, let's see what we got here. And of course a nice metal connector. That way I can short something out on accident. Should I send this through here? Woo! Alright, which one does, oh, that's gonna be hard to plug in. Maybe I should have left it. Got it. Okay, so moment of truth. Here we go. Ah, had to hold the button. Oh, what happened now? There it is. Let's just say 50.9 volts. It's a little low. You wanna know why it's low? Because this battery was running my house right up until 7:05, and it was quite dead at that point. And then I was like, well, it's dead. May as well take it out of commission. So here we go. It does fall asleep really quick. It has an error 9. It does not appear, but it's a touch screen, which is fine. I wasn't expecting it to be a touch screen. The viewing angle is not amazing. Oh, that's funny actually. Like left to right and from the bottom, the viewing angle is just fine. If I look at it from the top, it goes all weird. Yeah, you can kind of see it. It goes like all blurry. But like this direction, it's perfectly fine. So weird. Okay, the problem now is getting connected to this thing. Maybe I can use this phone. Oh, it is like almost dead. 10% battery. It's been charging this whole time. Maybe, with it being a 6-year-old iPhone, it doesn't work very well. All right, let's go to the camera. Just, oh gosh. No, I don't want to update. See, the problem now is that I've got you on my phone, and this apparently requires a phone to see what error 9 is. It might just be low volts for a cell. This phone apparently thinks that it's my phone, and it is now 30 days behind. It just got a text message from 29 days ago. I wonder if I have voltage on this thing. I probably don't even have a multimeter in here. I mean, I obviously have 50.9 volts. But it's got error 9. I'm sure I'll come back to this. Maybe I'll actually create a short video, because the point of it is to find out if this 0.6 amp balancer works, but also twofold. I want to see if I can use either the CAN bus that's built into the BMS to communicate with an inverter, or this RS-485 dongle to communicate to an inverter. I've been told two different things from the JK BMS people. One, oh yeah, you can connect to inverters. Might have just been trying to get a sale. And two, no, you can't connect to inverters. You would have to get it specially programmed to do that. So I don't know. But considering I can't get access to the BMS app right now, I am going to end the stream. I want to thank everybody for actually jumping on, all three of you that are left. Everyone else is like, okay, he's done. He's a little loopy now, and he should probably go drink a root beer float and go to bed, which is probably about what I'm going to go do. So I'll be back. I'm going to go watch the stream here and there and see how badly it did. See if I need to go buy myself another mic that I can have here so I can do some little streams here in my workshop. And thank you for dropping in. I really appreciate it, having someone to hang out for the last 83 minutes while I do this, which arguably would have been a lot faster if I didn't have you guys, but would have been a lot less fun. Have a great night.